right, everyone. Welcome back into the WobCast 2.0. It's episode 13. It's grounding the Jets. That's what the Vikings have done. They are victors 27-22. They moved to 10-2, and we are here for it. We're here to talk about it. It's Giles, it's Chase, it's Wobby. Welcome in. Guys, the Vikings are 10-2. 10-2. They've won 10 of 12 games, guys. How are we feeling?
I feel fantastic. If you would have told me that we'd be 10-2 at this point in the season, before the season, I would have been through the roof ecstatic. I was told growing up to keep your hands at 10-2 while driving, so hopefully we can keep this bus moving on.
That's right. Exactly right. Chase,
I don't care how we're winning games because we got 10 wins. So
okay. So you know what? Let's talk about how the Vikings are winning games because, you know, I think all season you've had a subsection of the fan base that's all in every time, no matter what. They win, they love it, they're feeling good. But you've got a subset of the base that is like, this is too good to be true. I don't believe how good this is. Miami didn't have Tua. The Saints didn't have Jameis. Detroit screwed it up by making a bad decision. The Redskins had us beat, but we still won. Like, you got those folks too, right? This one here, though, I really don't want to hear it from that second group. I really don't, because we were told. I mean, I don't know if anyone watched pregame shows, and I don't put much stock into this, but like, it was most people were like, the Jets are going to upset the Vikings here, and this is a legit defense, and finally the Vikings are going to play a really good defense. You have the caveat of it being Mike White and a backup quarterback, and just someone that people aren't impressed with. And they'll say, you know, another easy quarterback for the Vikings. They skate by again. They got outgained again, and they still won the game. But, you know, the offense to me looked like the offense usually looks, which is good. They scored 27 points. You'll take that, especially against this defense and this secondary. But I got to say, I don't want to hear the criticism of the Vikings defense really this week. 1 of 6, the Jets offense was in the red zone. And 3 of 16 on third downs. Guys, I don't know what the PFF grades are going to say, but all in all, this was, to me, one of my favorite performances by the defense.
I could not agree more. I think on both sides of the ball, there's definitely accolades to go around. If you look at the Minnesota Vikings offense versus the Jets defense, going into that game, in my opinion, the Jets, they were number 1 and number 2 in a lot of categories. They probably have the best secondary in football. For the last, I believe, 8 or 9 games, they're averaging 13 points allowed. And we scored 27 on them.
Wow.
Like, that is not something that should be gone understated. We scored double the amount they usually offer. So I think there's a huge accolade to give to the Minnesota Vikings offense. There were times where we didn't necessarily look great, but I think you can say that about every team in the NFL. There's going to be periods of the game where they do not look as well as you want them to, but the point is you come out ahead and you're able to score a number of points to be able to win. On the defensive side of the ball, I completely agree. I think they had one of their best performances of the entire season. Through the majority of the game, they were shutting them out. They had very, very few points. And in the second half, a lot of people are criticizing that they gave up way too many points in a little amount of time. But really, there was maybe 2 to 3 plays that they gave up that were really big, that were bad. Don't get me wrong, they were bad. But if you take 2 or 3 of those plays out of the game, they don't score on any of those things. So it's not like they were giving up all these plays and plays. It was 3 plays they gave up, which you're going to have that happen occasionally, right? It's just being completely realistic. So I'm very, very impressed with the Vikings as a whole. So how about you, Chase? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, Chase, you go ahead. Anything for you to add?
Yeah, defense looked stout, man. It was fun to watch because there was a couple of times in the game where they would just get right down into the red zone, and we held. I think they hit 5 field goals, and I would much rather have them score 5 field goals than 5 touchdowns. So it's a really impressive thing to see.
Yeah. So so we're singing the same tune here, guys. I don't think this is unanimous. I think there are folks out there who are discouraged, who are being critical of the defense, and they have the right to do that. And you're right, Giles, there were some plays given up there that were bad, and then there was a near miss, two near misses that were almost fatal. The 4th down in the end zone from Berrios. I mean, I'm not going to say he should have caught that, because I think 2 Vikings defenders touched the football on that play as well. It looked like to me. I think Kendrick's got his hand on it at the very end. Yeah. But I mean, that probably could have been a catch there. And then earlier in the game, Garrett Wilson had one that was maybe a finger too far for him that Patrick Peterson got burned on. But these are things that happen in the course of a game, every game, to every team. And they do say football is a game of inches, and those are two examples right there. Literally 2 plays that came down to an inch that would have altered the course of the game or the outcome of the game, perhaps. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at the Jets drive chart right now. Okay, and this is how the first half went for them. 4 plays, interception. 12 plays, good drive, got a field goal. 5 plays, punt. 5 plays, punt. 6 plays, turnover on downs. 6 plays, field goal. 8 plays, field goal. I mean, the Vikings defense put the team and the offense in a position to destroy the New York Jets by 20 or 30. That's what the Vikings defense did in the first half. And the Vikings offense was not able to convert on all that. They got a field goal after the Harrison Smith interception, right? And they scored a couple of touchdowns in the first half, but I don't think the Vikings offense poured the gas on the fire here. And I think the Vikings defense put the team in a position to have a blowout victory. And for once, the offense couldn't match what the defense was doing for that. All things being equal, or all things being said, Giles, you're right. To put up 27 against this Jets defense at the end of the day is good. But I think it's a defensive performance that's sort of masked a little bit by the offense's inability to take advantage of great defensive play.
Yeah, 100%. And I will say special teams did a decent job as well. So across the board, I think we were able to muscle through it. And that even on the offensive side of the ball, we didn't have Christian Darrisaw again against one of the better defensive lines in football. I think we did a decent job protecting Kirk. It wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I'm really optimistic for once Christian Darrisaw comes back as we tail out the rest of this season. And on the defensive side of the ball, at least for the first half, I think we got more pressure in that first half than we've had in any other half in the entire season. We got great pressure. So I was really excited to see that us dialing that up because we're one of the lowest blitz rate teams in the entire NFL. And I think that's partially for a reason. Our secondary isn't necessarily in a place where we can always punish that. They can punish us more times than not. So I think they're trying to be diligent about when and when they don't blitz. But we were able to get pressure pretty effectively. So that was really exciting to see.
Last thing two more things, I guess, on an individual level. I'm excited to see the PFF grades for Harrison Smith because my gut tells me he played well. I don't know if the grades will bear that out, but from an influential standpoint, from a, put your mark on the game. And it's not just the interception. I felt like Harrison Smith was a presence in the game. And then I liked, I think it was 29 runs, guys, that they had. And I don't know how many of those were Cousins scrambles, which aren't really runs, like in terms of like
traditional run game.
Yeah, in terms of like making the defense defend the run. So I have to look and see. I can find it really fast here. Cousins had, he had 3 carries. So I'm guessing all 3 were scrambles, I would guess.
Yep.
None of those were designed runs. So 26 called runs. I think is inching closer to where you should be if you're a playoff team in December. And then lastly, I guess, times 3 or part 3, I believe Cousins started 0 for 5. Is that true?
He did. Yep. Okay. Did not have a great start, at least from the past standpoint.
So that wasn't awesome. And he only finished with 173 yards, but previous renditions of Kirk Cousins with the Vikings, starting 0 for 5 was a disaster of a game. And I think he was able to sort of just stop the bleeding and level it off a little bit. Finished 21 of 35, but he had no picks. And again, only 2 sacks. And so I think the Vikings offense showed the ability to, after a really sluggish start, to not just tank and submarine it.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And that's actually one of the biggest reasons why I'm so in love with this team this year. Beyond being a born and bred Minnesota Vikings fan, the bias of emotion that comes with, logically, this team has found significantly more ways to win this season than previously. Because before, we were run first, and if we couldn't run first, all of it would fall apart. And this season, we've found ways to win in a lot of different ways. I think we were a little bit more run first this past week. JJ ended the the game with less than 50 yards, which wasn't a train wreck, but they definitely limited him in some categories. They didn't completely take him out of the game, but we definitely relied on the run game. And I think the point is we are built to win multiple ways, because when you're trying to go deep into January, into February, you need to be able to combat a lot of different types of teams, because it's a game of matchups, right? Where one week you're going to have one matchup here that's highly lucrative, and the next week it's going to be completely different. So being built to withstand all those different types when it gets to playoff time, I think is incredibly intriguing.
Yep, agreed. So, and I don't think you're going to run into many defenses that are this salty and this able to cover up a lot of different things. So here's kind of an anecdotal example of something I saw that really stuck out to me. The Jets have two really good corners. I mean, one is a budding superstar with Gardner, and the cat on the other side is good too, I think.
Yep, still Pro Bowl level in my opinion.
Yeah, okay. So it's like, all right, so you got good cover guys in the secondary. You might take away our stud wide receivers, but we're gonna have these tight ends and curls and in the flats, and we're gonna use the backs in the passing game. We're gonna bootleg a little bit. Well, the Jets covered that up too. There was 3 or 4 design bootlegs for Cousins, and he had someone in his grill immediately.
Yeah, a couple more corners.
Yeah, so like it's unusual that a defense could cover up all those things in the same game. The Jets can do that. Not many can. No. So I think it's going to be pretty rare when Cousins has 173 yards and Jefferson only has 45, and none of the other guys step up because Jefferson was nailed down. So this is a great week for the defense to have to me, one of its best performances of the season. It saved the game. It saved what could have been a home loss to the Jets, And so to me, I come away with that. Special teams wise, I continue to be impressed, guys, with the Vikings and how buttoned up they are in special teams. There was nothing sensational like we saw last week with the kickoff return touchdown, but they're not leaking yardage on special teams. They're not giving up lots of big returns. They'll sting the opposition for a nice return every now and then. Never a touchback when the Vikings punt. Never.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
I mean, never. So that's awesome.
Perfect placement.
I think I was going to say Zerline, but I think Joseph made a 51-yarder. Was it 51? So I mean,
51.
He hit from distance. So I know the place kicking game is a little suspect at times, but overall, special teams of late has been good. They were very good against the Patriots, and it's hard to be good on special teams against the Patriots, and they were good here against the Jets. So
I believe they actually had their best game all season against the Patriots. They scored an 80.9 PFF grade against the Patriots, which was phenomenal. And I think when you look across all the rest of the league, a lot of kickers have issues throughout the course of the year, right? There's no team with perfect kicking. Even Justin Tucker has games where he's not necessarily great. Now, don't get me wrong, he's a phenomenal player, but no team is without kicking issues. And I think as of yesterday, Chris Boyd was actually leading the league in Pro Bowl votes for special teams player.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah. So Chris Boyd is having a phenomenal Pro Bowl level year, which is a really great thing to see.
Yep. So those were some of the high points for me, guys. We're recording pretty early in the week here, folks, so we do not have the PFF grades. But I'd be interested in either of your perspectives or guesses on some of those grades that'll stand out high or low. I think Harry is going to grade out high. That'd be my suspicion there. Offensively, it will not surprise me if Dalvin grades out okay. And we might get an interior lineman or two who grade out okay. Because I was wondering if there were going to be some game wreckers on the interior for the Jets, and I just didn't see it. So I'm wondering if Ed Ingram is going to grade out pretty well here. Those would be my guesses on the grades.
Yeah, 100%. I think after last week, Ed Ingram actually got above a 70 grade in pass protection, which, I mean, was one game. Don't get me wrong. If you view it in a vacuum, was great. View it on the course of the season. Is it a blimp? I'm really excited to see the grades come out to see if he's able to stack those things on top of each other, because I've been saying it all season. I believe he has the potential to be a great right guard. He's just making rookie mistakes. He's not identifying what's coming at him, and he's misdeploying his assets, so to speak. So if he can get that mental part right, he'll be a phenomenal player because he has the strength and the size to be able to be a phenomenal right guard, which if that is the case, you bring our offensive line unit up into a top 5 or top 10 category, in my opinion, which is phenomenal considering who you have under center. Like we've mentioned before, Kirk Cousins is who he is. He has tremendous strengths and tremendous weaknesses. And if you're trying to win with him, you need to keep him protected, period. That is one of the formula requirements in order to win. And I think we've done a decent job thus far. On defense, I completely agree on Harrison Smith. I think he had a phenomenal game. I think a lot of people have been talking about the fact that he has lost a step and that he's getting old and blah, 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 blah. And I do think he's a high played player, which may not necessarily exist into the next season at current cap hit. But I do think when you look at it, he's been playing under Mike Zimmer and under a 4-3 defense for his entire career. And this is the first time in his entire career that he's been asked to change schemes, which he's a smart player. But for any player, when you've been doing something for that long and asking them to switch it, that is a process. And I think far more of his struggles, so to speak, have been scheme learning related than it is at all related to his competency or his ability to perform. And I think yesterday was an example of that. He can still be a phenomenal safety. He's just learning the system and trying to get up to speed, which if you're going to have anyone get up to speed at any time, now is the time. If you're going to start clicking, I'm glad it's right now.
Yep. Agreed. Game management stuff. I like looking at it, studying it, observing it, and opining on game management. It's something that I'm able to, discuss with people. And I think, Giles, you and I have had lots of discussions about it, and not everyone is good at it. But it's a valuable thing to be good at. And I love it. Talking about it. There aren't any issues. I mean, there are no big snafus by Kevin O'Connell and his staff. Am I missing anything? Okay, so you're nodding your head there. So
yeah, the only thing that I was questioning at the moment, but I think in hindsight worked out, was at the very end of the game when we decided to run it 3 times in a row when we were in the opposite end zone. When there was, I forget how much time left. It was towards the end where we had to give the ball back, and that was a requirement for us to stop them. I was expecting us to try to be a little bit more aggressive on getting out of the end zone and continuing on the clock to maintain for the rest of the game. That was the only questionable, game management call, to just run it 3 times in a row. But at the end of the day, it worked out. He, like you mentioned, pretty much every week he has forgotten more about football than I'll ever know. So
I know.
That was the only thing I was like, oh, is this really the best game plan to run it 3 times in a row? But they're also in the end zone. You didn't want to run a safety. I get it.
Exactly. Let's talk about that a little bit here, because this is good football fodder. I'm scrolling through the play-by-play. I want to get to it here. So the situation you're talking about, Giles, is the Vikings had the ball. Their possession started with 1:43 to go in the game.
Yes.
Where and this is after the Braxton Berrios incompletion / drop in the end zone, which would have given the Jets a lead, and didn't happen. So the Vikings take over on their own 1-yard line. And the Jets had 3 timeouts. And so with 1:43 to go, your choices are run the ball 3 straight times, take almost no time off the clock, but use up all of the Jets timeouts. That's one choice. Make them burn all their timeouts and give them the ball back. The other choice is run the risk of giving them a timeout, or of giving them 1 timeout. But the 3rd down pass play is a potential game winning play. So, and it was 3rd and 7 on your own 5. So at that point in time, you can dial up something to Jefferson or Thielen or Hawkinson for an 8-yard gain or more and win the game. The risk is an incompletion. You have to punt with 1.5 minutes to go, and the Jets have a timeout. So that's what you're looking at there. So my thought there is, if I am O'Connell and the opposition needs a field goal to tie it or win it, they were down
by 5, weren't they?
Yeah, I might go. I might go for the dagger there. That's where I might go for it.
Okay.
But because they were going to have to go the whole length of the field with no timeouts and score a touchdown. I feel like I'm going to play defense there.
That's fair.
And so maybe that's what O'Connell is thinking.
That definitely makes sense.
That's probably the most interesting game management scenario in that game. And for the balance of the season, I have not seen major screw ups by O'Connell and his staff, clock management wise. And so that's something that they have working in their favor this season as well.
Yep. I think that and special teams has contributed to a significant portion of our success this year because we played some really good teams. We have a relatively difficult schedule in contrast to the rest of the year or rest of the league. We've played some really close games. And I think if you don't make some of those time management decisions that we did in contrast to what they could have been and what we've been able to do from a special team standpoint, that has led to a big portion of our success, period.
Yep. Okay, let's put this one away unless I missed anything. Anything you want to touch on before we put this victory behind us?
No, on to week 14.
Okay, and that will be the Detroit Lions, guys. The resurgent Detroit Lions, I might add, who have won 4 of their last 5.
Yep.
Victories over Green Bay at home, at Chicago, at the Giants, and home against the Jaguars. The only blemish in that the last month for them has been a tight loss at home to the Bills on Thanksgiving, right? That was on Thanksgiving.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So a 3-point loss at home to the Bills on Thanksgiving.
And a close game, I might add.
Yeah. So, and then the Vikings were on the ropes against the Lions earlier this season. Really, the Lions should have won the game if not for an awful game management call on the Lions' part. And this was a 40-14 pounding that the Lions put on the Jaguars last week. So the Lions are not afraid of the Vikings. They are hosting the Vikings, and they have their eye on a wild card spot. So you are going to get the Lions' best shot here on Sunday at Ford Field when the Vikings travel there to try and clinch the NFC North. I don't think there's any doubt the Vikings will be in the playoffs, and there's really no doubt they'll clinch the NFC North, but they can make it official by defeating the Lions next week. I see a high-scoring offense. I see a fairly leaky defense. And I see a motivated Lions team with the arrow pointing up. That's what the Vikings are up against, high level. That's what I see. What do you guys see?
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think it'll be a very high-scoring game across the board because up until mid-season, the Lions were the number 1 scoring offense in the league. Now, they had a little bit of a drought there in the middle there, but they have the ability to score points. And I simply think we're going to have a lot of points put on the board. I think it'll be an interesting storyline to follow TJ Hawkinson. One, because it's a revenge game from him, but ultimately he was a pretty decent part of their offense. And I'm really intrigued to see what learnings that he can provide to our Minnesota Vikings to try to stop them on defense.
Sure. Yep, that makes sense. Chase?
Yeah, I'm really interested to watch TJ Hawkinson back in Detroit, but where my eyes are kind of going is the matchup of Patrick Peterson and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that's where we're going to win this game. I think that he carries a big load. St. Brown carries a big load for the Lions offense. And I think if you can take him out of the game, I think it will be a lot easier for us to leave there with a dub.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, 12 targets last week against the Jags. This is what he did with those 12 targets. 11 catches, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns. All right.
So that's my fantasy team.
Okay. So he's a problem. Okay. Jared Goff, 31-41, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, sacked only twice on 41 dropbacks, guys. That's once every 20 dropbacks. Yep. And they do have a good offensive line, Giles, right? I mean, you've talked about the Lions offensive line as being top 10 in the league. They grade out well PFF wise.
Top 3 even. I mean, certain weeks they're number 1, but they're definitely top 3 across the board. And I think looking back to the 2018 season, Jared Goff, when protected, is very, very good. He's not an amazing quarterback across the board, but when protected, he can definitely sling the ball.
Yeah, I think you'd say great system. Great. You'd call him a system quarterback, right? Like when he was in McVay's system and insulated, he was pretty good. And it appears that when he's insulated and protected here, his numbers are good at least. So
correct. Yeah, with an aggressive coach, when all things are going right for him, I would call him a Diet Kirk Cousins.
Okay. Very good. I love that.
That's good.
Yeah. All right. Let's peek around the division here a little bit, or the conference really. Let's peek around the NFC. What developed yesterday for the Vikings was mostly neutral, I would say, because the Cowboys won, the Eagles won, but the Vikings also won. So really not much movement there. Now, the Cowboys are worth watching because the Vikings want the Eagles to stumble, so the Vikings get the 1 seed. But if the Eagles stumble is due to the Cowboys' resurgence, then it's sort of just all comes out in the wash because the Vikings lost to the Cowboys. So they would lose that tiebreaker as well. So the Vikings need both the Eagles and Cowboys to stumble. Now the Vikings are one game ahead as it stands right now of the Cowboys. So the Vikings would need to stumble a couple of times. But anyway, nothing really happened standings wise, positively or negatively for the Vikings. What I will say, however, is there's a development out in the Bay Area that's not good for San Francisco. That is good for the Vikings. And that is Jimmy Garoppolo breaking his foot. He's out for the year. The Niners are a team that are currently 2 games behind the Vikings, and we're a candidate to jump up and steal a seed. And now I don't think they are, with all due respect to Brock Purdy and their victory yesterday. Over the last month of the season in December and early January, I don't see that continuing for Purdy and the Niners. Killer. Yep, that one stinks. And look, they're already at 8 wins. They're going to get in as either a wild card most likely or a division winner if they can hold off the Seahawks. But I mean, they're going to go into a playoff game with Brock Purdy. So if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'm looking at it as a challenge, and trying to psych myself up. But if you're a 49er faithful right now, you're super bummed out. Yeah. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the other division leader right now. They are no threat to the Vikings from a seed perspective, but they do play tonight against the New Orleans Saints. The NFC South is far from decided, and that game is a significant one for that division, but not for anyone else in the NFC. The Vikings are looking up at the Eagles and no one else, and the Cowboys are nipping at their heels. Lots of NFC East bloodshed to come here in the last month of the season. They play each other a lot. And the Eagles, who defeated the Cowboys earlier in the season, will get the Cowboys' best shot here in a couple of weeks. When is that game? Is that next week?
I believe it's week 15, isn't it?
Okay, so that's going to be one to watch.
Yeah.
18, 17. Yeah, it is. So I think the Vikings are in really good shape for the 2 seed, guys, is kind of what I'm trying to say. And if you look at the way it stands right now, it's Eagles, Vikings, Cowboys, Niners. If something were to change, the most likely change in my view is the Vikings jumping the Eagles. That's the most likely change if there is one. The second most likely change is a flip-flop of the Eagles and Cowboys, and the Vikings stay at 2. It's going to be one of those 2 things, I think. That's sort of how I see it. Any other NFC observations when you take a look at the playoff chase?
Honestly, I really think that second one that you just said is a very likely scenario. I think the Cowboys could definitely pass the Eagles. I think they're the best team in football right now. I mean, did you watch the game last night? That was a little bit of a scoregami with the Colts, but I think I do not want to see them again. So,
yeah, not a great matchup for the Vikings, and we saw that. I think there's something to be said for you're the team that beat a team in the regular season once, and now you got to play them in the playoffs and beat them again. That's not fun. That's not a great task to have to do. One of those 2 teams, the Eagles or Cowboys, are going to have to do it though to the Vikings. I have a feeling that there's going to be a Vikings versus Eagles or Vikings versus Cowboys playoff matchup this year, or both. So I think
I'd rather play the Eagles, honestly, in contrast to the Cowboys.
Yeah, you might be right there. I think we're a little too far out to speculate for more than a minute on this, but you look at what's likely to happen for the Vikings in the playoffs, it's probably a Giants or Commanders first round game, I would think. Yeah. Okay.
I would agree. Because I think the Commanders are starting to get better and the Giants are starting to do the opposite. If I had to pick, I would much rather play the Giants for obvious reasons. Now, divisional games are always a little interesting. I think that's partially why they tied yesterday. But I do think the Commanders are starting to become a better team. They have a tremendous defense. Their defensive line is scary. And it's a mismatch for the Vikings, absolutely. So definitely something to watch.
Yep. The other first round matchup that is potential is the Seahawks. They're 7-5. However, I think they have a shot to jump up and catch the Niners and win that division. At that point, then it would be the Niners who would potentially be a first round matchup for the Vikings, who with Jimmy G, I would say is an awful matchup for the Vikings. You don't want to see the Niners. No. I don't think.
Best without defense Jimmy in football G, right now.
Yes. Without Jimmy G, I think that it's not so much that. The defense is still the defense, but the offense isn't going to put as much pressure on you when their defense gives them a short field. They're not going to take advantage of it as easily as they would with Jimmy G. So I think it's a little bit easier of a game now than it might have appeared to be. So,
yeah.
All right. We've been doing top 10 lists lately, guys, and putting them on social, and it generates conversation. I can tell you that. So Chase, I don't know if you've decided what we're doing this week for a top 10. Have you?
I'm debating between two right now. I'm
Okay.
looking at running backs, but I saw a lot of guys in your Twitter comments not liking your comment about Adam Thielen. So
Yeah.
I'm considering wide receiver 2s as well.
Oh, I like
yeah.
that.
Should we do that one?
Okay, very good. All right, we'll see what Chase drums up to drum up some absolute vitriol coming at yours truly on Twitter, which I take it in good faith. It's fun. It's actually it's a really fun part of what we do, is generating that conversation. So I look forward to the text from Chase that says, all right, give me your top blank, or give me the most likely blank. And we come up with a list and we put it out there on social media. It's fun to talk about it. So,
boom.
All right. PFF grades come out yet, Giles? I know you're just
refresh.
mashing refresh right now on your browser.
Nothing yet, unfortunately.
All
We'll have to
right.
wait until next time. But I'm definitely raring to see what those things look like, because I think we're going to see some nice green colors there for the Vikings.
Well, we'll also put the PFF grades out on social, right? When they come out. All right. So folks,
we'll have them out later today or tomorrow.
Okay. Very good. All right. My notebook is empty, guys. Anything else for you?
No, let's continue this Victory Monday streak.
Kind of fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Victory Mondays are fun, and so is doing this for all of you guys. The WobCast 2.0 episode 13 is over. More to come, though, as the Viking season continues. We hope you subscribe, like, and follow and listen to all of our content. And you can catch the WobCast 2.0 wherever you find all of your other favorite podcasts. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, etc. We're on YouTube, at Wobby on Twitter, therealwobcast@gmail.com. Those are the places to find us when we're not talking directly to you on the WobCast 2.0, and we hope that you do that. My thanks, as always, to Giles and Chase for doing a great job behind the scenes and making this thing tick. And my thanks to you guys for listening. On behalf of Giles and Chase, this is Wobby signing off for now. Skol Vikings.